Giving me breath, giving me life, you're my healer. You're holding me up, letting me shine for all to see what you've done for me. Let my life show who you are. Oh Jesus, I wanna be like you are, more than I ever have before. My Savior, my beating heart is yours. Oh, it longs to love you more. It longs to love you. How you love me. You give up your son so we could be one. You'll never leave me. Said it was done, the battle is won. Hallelujah, you've conquered it all. Let me sing of who you are. Oh Jesus, I wanna be like you are, more than I ever have before. My Savior, my beating heart is yours. Oh, it longs to love you more. I wanna be like you, Lord. I wanna see like you, Lord. I wanna care like you, Lord. I wanna love like you, Lord. Oh Jesus, I wanna be like you are, more than I ever have before. My Savior, my beating heart is yours. Oh, it longs to love you more. Oh Jesus, I wanna be like you are, more than I ever have before. My Savior, my beating heart is yours. Oh, it longs to love you more. I wanna be like you, Lord. I wanna see like you, Lord. I wanna care like you, Lord. I wanna love like you, Lord. Oh, sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. And failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. No failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Oh, lay your burdens down. Oh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Oh, you're in the Father's house. Oh. just one night long, and the story isn't over if the story isn't good. Failure's never final when the Father's in the room. I say failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Oh, lay your burdens down. Oh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Oh, you're in the Father's house. Oh, you're in the Father's house now. Prodigals come home, helpless find home. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors swing wide, the dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Oh yeah, miracles take place, cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Jericho walls are quaking, strong ones now are shaking. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. I said, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Oh, lay your burdens down. Oh, you're in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Oh, you're in the Father's house. Oh, yeah. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Oh, you're in the Father's house.
Hey, thank you. I am here with Pastor Richard Lee of Village Baptist Church and Pastor Tracy Pounders from Cross Point. We just want to have a conversation. We're just going to talk, and we want to invite you into this conversation and discuss some things that are just tough. We're in some hard places, and we have some very, very difficult decisions to make. I know that you've had to make them, and I've had to make them, and we've had some incredibly good discussion before you guys joined us. But I just want to start by saying, of all the issues that surround what we're facing here, of everything that's going on to you, what is your greatest concern?
Greatest concern, boy, I could answer that several different ways. So, I mean, who knows? Part of, again, you said the greatest one. I'm going to go to the jugular of what I see it.
Okay.
And I don't know how much to caveat it because people are so sensitive, in terms of the polarization of people's opinions and those kinds of things. That being said, we want to be sensitive to those who are sick. We want to take care of them, and we want to be wise and be clean and safe and all of that. And yet, I'm pretty passionate over the fact that this shutdown is crippling our economy. I'm not so much concerned about the economy as what I see as the ramifications of the effectiveness of the gospel.
Right.
And I mean that to the tune of globally, an article, I think it's the BBC put it out, said 135 million people are starving because of what's happening in the U.S.
It's
from
crazy.
our economy.
Right.
So then I internalize that to the countries I've been to and the orphanages that I've been a part of, so I can give you names and details and smells that come to mind.
Makes all the difference in the
six
world.
different countries
Personal.
that are suffering because our economy is suffering and our people are no longer able to give
Right.
as much.
Right.
We're doing some,
Right.
but just not as much.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how I can live with myself in that regard. And so I'm struggling with that. I'm wrestling with that. You're finding all kinds of, we're being creative in ways to connect here locally with people. But from the mission of the church and the gospel impact, it's hurting us.
No, absolutely. I've got real people with real worries who are not here. It is the secondary and the tertiary issues that are really far-reaching. And it's easy to forget that. It's easy for us to kind of say, all right, because we're doing okay.
Yes.
We're kind of in a bubble here.
Yes, we are.
In this area, a lot of the folks that we have here are military employees or government employees. They're getting checks, but you're absolutely right. It is so far-reaching. I heard that it is $135 million, and it would be potentially going to $200 million if this were to continue 2 more weeks. So when you think about that, because I guess to answer the question of is it a lack of compassion that we would want to get back to, our normal ways, because there's 3 major concerns that I'm trying to balance, as I'm assuming you are, which is one reason I really wanted you here. One is just that, is the financial future of not just America, but the world. Mm-hmm. America supplies, we reach the world with the gospel. Not only that, we reach the world, we're the bread basket. God has kind of set it up that way. But there's the financial issue, financial future. There's the religious freedom aspect, which I know is a huge concern for folks. And then there's the obvious health issue. And I can I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for you, that's why you're here, but I'm just going to tell you, no matter what you hear, no matter what anybody says, no leader in their right mind wants anybody to experience death or hurt.
None.
Now, I understand that we can never totally make everybody safe from anything. That's just, we're living in a broken world. But out of those 3 concerns, Tracy, what do you think your first concern is?
Religious liberty, hands down. I see a pattern emerging that really bothers me, because you never give up a freedom and automatically it just comes back. There's always a great price to pay whenever religious liberties are oppressed or put under control. And for me, and everybody has a different opinion, but for me, at some point, this whole narrative, I think it probably started with good intentions and it was a concern issue. But for me, and it's just me maybe, but I see it becoming more of a control issue. And I don't see it being balanced when it comes to, you got a pastor in Mississippi that's being arrested for having a drive-in church service with the windows up, or you've got members being cited, $500 fines for pulling out as they're pulling out of the parking lot. And then, for me, every Sunday I drive to an empty parking lot and get ready to, we pre-record everything.
Right.
So I can chat with members and encourage them while they're watching and, pray over them, whatever. I drive around the church and pray every Sunday before we leave. And then on my way home, I drive past Food Lion and Harris Teeter, and the parking lots are slammed with people.
Right.
That bothers me a little bit, because to me it's no longer a concern issue. If it's really concerned, there would be, I know we say that there are measures in place, but it's clearly at least not being enforced in a lot of environments like what it is being on churches. So that's a religious liberty issue to me.
Right.
And I think it's going to be hard for us to get it back. And plus, I'm also a little bit bothered by the fact that Christian folk aren't pushing back very much. They're just kind of, and I have a very divided congregation. Okay, I think, Richard, you mentioned that. There's a lot of different opinions.
Certainly. And
the narrative has been, fear, propelled primarily by the media. And, I can always tell in a conversation who has their ear.
Right.
Because and I've even had staff members, that I've had to coach up and say, hey, we're an organization of faith. We're an institution of God. Our whole livelihood and our whole effect on reaching the lost is based upon the faith factor, not the fear factor. So what are we going to do with that? How are we going to counter this fear that so many people have instilled in their lives? And, for me, it's changed the way I'm approaching even sharing my sermons online.
I have never seen an entity take freedom and then give it back, not without a fight. So there is what I believe legitimate concern for that. And we'll talk about what we want to say to that demographic to bring them peace in the middle of this. He mentioned something, and I mentioned it earlier in conversation. I really wanted to start out this way. But I said, you, by your own admission, on your post, you said you try to stay out of the fray when it comes to anything that is remotely political.
Right.
But you've decided to come here, and you've decided to make your voice heard.
Right.
Tell me, talk to me.
Yeah,
Why?
so I'm not into the political thing. I've been very vocal on my mission is Jesus, not politics.
Right.
And The heart of the king's in the hand of the Lord, and so I'm going to vote. I'm going to exercise my Christian, and liberties and responsibilities.
It matters.
It does matter. It does matter. But I have chosen not to be on the political side because I want to reach people for Christ and not let the polarization of that, because my message is Jesus, not politics. Okay. That being said, the reason I'm speaking up now is this is now becoming a gospel issue. And I reference the starvation of people. And I realize you can pull one heartstring story and you have to look at the totality of it, okay? I have not been that concerned initially on the religious liberties. I thought, hey, let's support our government. Let's be good citizens. Let's be responsible.
Abide by the law of the land.
Let's take care of this.
Right.
The longer this thing stretches out, and I'm a decently enough educated person to do the math and see that statistically, and I'm not a medical person. I don't want to speak to that. So, send your emails to Tony, not me. But, the issue, though, is if you do the math, we have other issues that we have not shut down the government for or shut down life and society for.
Right.
We're using this for fear instead of looking at some of the facts.
Right.
And so, again, that may sound heartless. And I have a daughter that's in the healthcare industry that's working with this, that has, dealt with folks who have passed away. So I'm not trying to be insensitive there.
Right.
I'm speaking up now because I think the mission globally, the gospel globally, we need to get to work so that our people are paid, so that we can give and support missions causes.
No, I absolutely agree. And one of the, there's a lot of accusations out there. And I'll just tell you, when the church says, because I've got people who religious freedom is right there. Man, they're ready to charge the doors and do sermons if I don't. They're ready to get in the pulpit and preach. They're fearful of losing their freedoms, and we need to be able to bring them along from that place of fear as well. We've got people financially. A lot of people are doing well. There will be churches that do not recover. There will be gospels.
There's some that are going out of business now.
Right. Period. True. Not just businesses, but churches. And I look at that and go, oh, wow.
Yep.
Wow. And in fact, one local church, I haven't asked permission, but they did share with me earlier today in a conversation that is really where their heart is, and they've created a fund just to kind of help those local churches who may be in those situations. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. I know you've got a building fund, you've got some other things that are going on, but the accusation that, we want to open up so we can fill our coffers. One, that is absolutely erroneous. And I wanted to give these pastors an opportunity to come and really be able to have a say. And that's why we're having this discussion. Because anybody can make an accusation. But until you've walked a mile in a person's shoes, until you've developed or at least given an opportunity to have empathy. Because I have stories.
Yes.
You said there's particular people and smells and sights and sounds.
Yes.
I have people. I had a guy pull into the parking lot. And before I could get to him to do a drive-through prayer, he is breaking down and crying. And this is a grown man. There are people who are hurting, and these are people who have absolutely, statistically, nothing to fear from a disease or this particular virus. Look, and I'm totally empathetic. When we thought that there was 1 million people going to die from this, I spoke to a physician. I said, let me ask you something. I said, do you consider this a disproportionate response? He said, I do not. He said, I do not because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
He said, however, the question is this a disproportionate continuation? Life has got to go on. This is why freedom is so important to me, because there's certain things that make life worth living.
Right.
Being able to spread the gospel, and the idea that the gospel could be hampered by years around the world, very, very real. Financially, religious freedom, health and medical. Let me ask you this. You mentioned, Tracy, actually, about you made a post and you felt like it was middle of the road, because these are 3 very real issues for us. How difficult personally has it been for you to balance these 3 issues? To be sensitive to each and to try to point each one to a place of faith as opposed to a place of fear. How difficult for you personally?
Well, the problem is, in my opinion, is that I don't have the ear of my congregation right now. Somebody else has got it. I always thought I had a lot of influence because about 60% of our church family have come to faith in the last 6 years.
Okay.
So out of 1,200 people, that's a lot.
That's a really
so
good time.
we've got a lot of new believers in our church, and it's not that they don't know the difference, between right and wrong, because I think primarily that they do. But I think what happens is, in the absence of a voice of reason, they'll listen to anything. But I'm quite concerned that I will not be able to counter the culture not having the ear of the people any longer than what I do to build faith and instill faith back in their lives.
Right. On a personal level, personally,
Yep.
what's been most challenging for you?
Well, I love people, and so not being able to see them.
We
Yeah.
love people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah, and I'm a hugger by nature, and so I mean it's difficult for me to stand across the room. I've seen a few. How you doing? So, and I think one of the things that this is, I've used the words. I've spun this a little bit to this has been a divine interruption.
right.
And this is a divine reset for us.
Right.
So how can we move forward? And I think one of the values is what we're talking about is community. We need one another.
We do.
We were made for one another. The New Testament talks about 100 one another's in the New Testament.
right.
And I'm grateful for Zoom, grateful for online, grateful for those connections, and our people are doing a great job with that. Proud of them, but it's not the same.
It's not.
And so that's a big deal. And so locally, you've heard me talk about the global pandemic of
Right.
starvation.
Right.
What I don't hear anybody talking about is how Corona's going to mess my marriage up. Corona is causing domestic violence issues.
Right.
And those that are in desperate need of community and some help, but we're quarantined because a few people are sick.
Right. 40% increase in domestic violence. The inequity of it is kind of, and I understand government has to make difficult decisions. In our county, Hoke County, we have around 50 cases and 0 deaths, but we are under the same restrictions here, and people seem to be just as concerned here as they are in New York City.
Right. And so we're in Cumberland County. Our stats are a little higher, and we are having a few, but percentage-wise,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, you're right. We're not New York City, so let's don't put those same restrictions on us.
Right, and I have reached out of my circles anytime, and something that I personally really try to do, which is one reason I have you guys here. I'll just be honest
Yeah.
with you. Anytime I run into something that I haven't encountered before, I really try to increase my circle of counsel.
Sure.
And we're in the same boat.
Yep.
So I reached out to the medical community. Look, normally I wouldn't, but under these circumstances, I thought that's very, very wise. And one particular doctor, again, and they are so afraid to even come and talk about this publicly because of the political pressure. You put a video contrary to what mainstream media says, and they will absolutely take it down. But he said something that brought great comfort to me. And listen, that's what we're called to do. We just want to comfort our people, and we do that best in relationship. But he said, our area will never, under any circumstances, be in New York City. One, we don't have subways, which are petri dishes. Mm-hmm. We don't live on top of each other. Most of the houses around this area are an acre apart, or a half acre, a quarter acre, and so it is very, very different. And I know things are different, but we do have similarities as well. I know you have people that fall into all three of these categories.
Every bit. Yep.
We have like you, Tracy, we have a lot of new converts. We have a very young demographic age-wise church. We have a preschool, and the preschool I have the difficult decisions. I have employees. And these are not just employees, these are families, these are friends, these are people. And by the grace of God, by the goodness of God, we've not had to let any of those folks go. These are real casualties. Some of the other counseling that's going on, some of the other stories that I hear about that I can't, like you, I can't share here.
Right.
But there are so many, and it is challenging. I'm with you. I love people. I wouldn't do this if I didn't care about people.
And I think what people don't understand, because we are so polarized, and we do have people. I mean, I've got folks that are susceptible to this, so they need to stay home.
Absolutely.
We bless that.
You
We
should have that
encourage
right.
that. We want you to.
Absolutely.
And however we can serve you, we want to do that.
Right, and I'm willing to do whatever. We will have additional sanitation
Right.
stations. We'll make sure nobody's shamed for wearing a mask or,
Right.
or not shamed
Right.
for wearing a mask. But that's all about freedom, and I really think where the Spirit of the Lord is, we should foster that
That's right.
freedom. I don't shame people into the kingdom even.
The Christian community needs to be kind about this too,
Amen.
and not become polarized over this issue.
Absolutely.
Yes, we need to stand up. And, I so appreciate what you said. I haven't been concerned on the religious freedom side, but I'm getting concerned.
Right.
And what I said initially was there will come a day, if you believe
Right.
what you believe on the end times and things are going to get tough.
They're going to get nasty.
And I'm probably going to get arrested for what I preach because I'm going
Right.
to preach the Bible.
Right.
It's truth. And yet, I haven't felt like this is that issue yet.
Right.
Okay? But we need to get back to work so that we're functioning as a culture and allowing some of these gospel projects and missions to go forward. So, we're in the same boat with the preschool, and we have an academy, and those kinds of things are all impacted.
And those are lives.
They're
Those are
real.
kids who have real lives and real futures, who now have no graduations and a lot of
Right.
crazy stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could be real transparent and a little bit vulnerable and get a little input from you guys on something. I read a pretty compelling article, and if I could remember the source, I'd give it to you, and I'll look it up. But it said that probably even after all of the restrictions are lifted, that there would be a third of Christian people that still would not come back to church out of fear.
Right.
And I got to thinking about that. And, we have a pretty tight program for discipling and bringing Christians, new believers, into the fellowship of Christ. But it takes time with new believers, and I've been very patient, and you have to be. But I'll be honest with you, I beat myself up a little bit because I'm going, wow, if I haven't done a better job of preaching faith over fear, that a third of my church is not going to come back because they're afraid of what might happen. How does the narrative change going into the future? I mean, what as pastors is our responsibility to prop up people and to help them to lean into faith in a better way, so that, because I believe this is a test run for the devil. I just believe,
Right.
I believe he's doing a phenomenal job on this
Right,
test run.
right.
And what's happening, we're not a police state in the sense of all out, but I see all this stuff going on that's just total disarray, and religious liberty, again, is a concern, but I see things that I'm like, golly, the devil knows now what the hot button is for Christian people.
Right.
Scare the life out of them,
right.
and they won't come out.
So-
they're going to stay home. So how do we counter that?
I think some of this is what has happened. It's revealed our idols, and so to our fears, and even in economy. Money doesn't need to be our idol.
That's right.
We're talking about how we move things forward,
Right.
and so overcoming fear and not living, because at the end of the day, we know we win.
Absolutely.
So why are we worried about it?
Right.
Let's.
So,
Something's going to get you. Let's get after it.
I say it all the time. There's more to life than this life. The
That's
best
right.
is yet to come, but the best may not be yet to come in this life.
Right.
It may just be where we're headed.
That's
But
right.
Well, what we do is in preparation for the worst thing the enemy can throw at us. We preach the gospel because there is hope beyond anything in this world.
Right.
Now, you hit on something, and I want to touch on it for just a minute, because, I say this, I believe, like you do in a lot of ways, this has been a real eye-opener for me and my organization. It really has.
Sure.
Some good things have come out of this.
Very.
God causes all things to work together for good. I didn't say they were easy, okay?
Right.
But I absolutely believe that some good things that will ultimately allow us to be more effective moving forward. Tracy, I would say to you in that situation, we can never forget this, and you know this. You can never care more about people than they do, okay? My response is my responsibility, and I feel that. I felt, I'm going, you know what? I've got people who are terrified, and I've done 3 series on fear and facing the giants of our lives. Is anybody listening?
Right.
Yeah, but even in this, there's opportunity for you to put feet to your faith. Mm-hmm. And sermons this is where people get to ask themselves those questions.
Right.
You know what? Is this real to me? Do I have a real God who can counter a real virus or a real giant, or is all of this semantics? Is all of this, is my religion and my relationship with God merely philosophical? When I run into real financial problems, a real disaster, do I have a real God who shows up in real power, or do I cower?
Right.
These are real questions we need to answer. And I think this is a wonderful, safe.
Crisis causes you to run to God or run from God.
That's right.
And so, which one you doing?
Yeah.
Because it reveals the real you.
Right.
And so we're finding out who's who in some of this.
So what area are you better at now, or better in, than you were when
So
you started?
I think our people are actually more engaged on the positive side.
Okay.
And I'm just being honest, our staff has contacted everybody on our church roll.
Okay.
We would not have done that had they been open.
Amen.
So,
That's true.
I mean, there's been some good divine appointments and connections because of that.
Okay.
We love one another better.
Good.
I think we're also understanding the value of this.
Oh,
and so
yes.
the commercialization of consumer Christianity,
Consumer Christianity.
dead. And that's a good thing. So now we can get back to the mission. So
Amen.
when we come back, we're going to be more mission focused
Because church was optional.
than it was optional.
Inconsistency was consistent.
Right. And I think we'll lose people who decided, you know what, this wasn't too bad. We got out of the habit. I ain't coming back.
Right.
And I've had one of them kind of jokingly, but he makes the point. He said, church is easier to attend in my boxer shorts watching online, so I don't need to come back.
Yeah.
But there's a problem.
And with every joke, there's an element of truth there. So that's
There
Yeah,
is.
right.
And it is. And we know this. To be a Christian means that you are giving. You do it for the good of others.
Yep.
It's not, like you said,
That's
I
right.
love that, the consumer mentality.
Yep.
It'll have to be addressed. And I think moving forward is really good. Couple areas for me that I just think that we have really moved forward in. One, the engagement. We're not about attendance as much as we are about engagement. A lot of people, that's great, that's wonderful, but how many people are engaging in the gospel? How many people are doing something? The number of outreaches, the number of congregational initiated outreaches. And here's what our challenge is. Our challenge is how do we promote and release this onslaught of people who are being compelled by the Spirit of God to do something and just want to have permission to do it. We worked this entire week going, who are we missing? And how can we release people more with more agility?
Yep.
In other words, how can we say yes to more people? And what do we need to do to make that happen? And I'll just tell you, it has been incredible. The content that we've been producing, the quality of content that we've been producing. I don't know about you guys. I am working harder now than I've ever worked in my life.
Without a doubt.
Oh,
No,
hallelujah.
Hands
Yeah.
down. Hands down.
People say, I actually need a nap.
Oh, man.
Golly, I don't think there's been a night because the online thing and being in front of a camera. I've never really focused on the camera. I've always fed off the audience in the room, and just talking to a camera in an empty room has been a major challenge for me. But what it's done for us is, like I say, we pre-record everything. But on Sunday, the very first Sunday that I was chatting with people, I was welcomed to the online audience by people who say, hey, it's great to have y'all here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah. And then they said, it's usually real quiet. We always watch, but there's never all these people on talking. So what it's done for us is we've picked it up a notch, several notches to make our online presence that, because I never really thought about it. I always spoke to the people in the room, and I've told my team, even when we're, turned loose to go back to having services, we need to speak to the people in that camera, because there's an audience there that, that's hungry for Christ, that, and then sometimes it's just your people that can't get to church for whatever, but we've reached a lot of people that, you're right, we would have never reached otherwise. Yeah. So there's the positive spin for me is that we're up in our game with our online, and we're going to try to take the gospel to a higher level than we ever have before. But, for somebody that's way out of their comfort zone and trying to find the best things in it, it really helps to look at it from that perspective.
I think we have to, for pastors to understand we cannot ignore the online thing. And we're debating that as a staff,
Right.
What's better? So at the end of the day, we don't get to choose. People are going to choose.
Right. It's not an either or.
It's not. So we were already we got 2 campuses. It's a total of 3 worship gatherings. But then our online audience prior to this was probably our second largest gathering.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, probably moving forward, you're going to be speaking to more people online than you are in the room.
Right.
And that's just a reality of things we have to adjust to.
So we will have to adjust our resources. We
Yep.
will have to make changes. But again,
It's a paradigm shift.
would we have done? Let's
Nope.
just be honest. We wouldn't have done it.
We knew not.
Had God not put us in this position, we would have never fast-tracked and engaged outreach in the communities like we have. A lot of people never would have. We'd have never increased the caliber of our production. And I believe that God has something. I believe He wants to bring revival in an amazing way. So I was speaking to somebody who is a public relations person, and they challenged me to do something. So I'm gonna mess with y'all for just a minute. Y'all ready for this? All right,
sure. Bring it.
They said, please look through things. Try to look at things through a different lens. So we'll mess with Richard
ahead.
first.
Yeah,
So Richard,
start with Richard, please.
so I need you to encourage and bring from fear to faith those who are really concerned about the financial future and the ability to reach with the gospel. Give them hope.
Okay, so for those that are concerned about our finances succeeding.
Your biggest concern, you encourage those who share that biggest concern. How are you going to do
Okay,
that?
first of all, I believe that there's a God who is bigger than me.
Come on.
Okay, and we're not God. So recently in one of the messages it was, there is a God in heaven. Daniel chapter 2, he's saying there is a God in heaven.
Oh, that's good.
And then the second one is, I'm not him. And you're not him. And so we can trust the fact that God is in charge, that this hadn't caught him by surprise, and this is awaking a sleeping giant of the church to get back to the mission of the gospel. Good. So I'm not going to cower in fear. Now I'm actually evaluating my own income and my own expenses and how I spend my money, because you can say, well, if you're so concerned about those that are starving, why don't you give more? Okay, well, I'll evaluate that, but don't play my emotions with that.
Right,
I'm a steward over everything, not just a little bit of directing my funds. Okay,
right.
And so with all of that, we have to evaluate what we're doing. So now we're actually getting back to more first century Christian conversations than we were before.
That's good.
Let's be honest.
Yes.
American Christianity is a consumer-driven product.
Yes.
Now we're getting back to the mission of the gospel and what do we believe and how are we going to live this out? And that ultimately is a good thing.
Will you suffer to execute that conviction? That is a really good
Yeah.
thing. Oh, Tracy, so how do you bring from fear to faith those who are worried about losing religious freedom in America?
Okay, let me go back to what Richard said and then remind me, because I'll forget your question.
You'll cheat. Yeah.
I wanted to model generosity to my church when all this happened. I wanted to model that to the church. So, my dad was one of the most he was the only pastor I've ever had before I became a pastor, but he was one of the most generous people that I've ever known, and he was an old school, old Pentecostal guy, and so but he told me, he said, son, if you need a blessing, be a blessing. And that just pounded that into us all of our lives. And, if I got in trouble with something, my dad's first question would be if a car broke down and I had to spend a lot of money. He said, you paying your tithes, boy, like you're supposed to be paying your tithes? Just old school kind of stuff. And so anyway, when this happened, because of how I was raised and how often God has proved himself to me, I called my board. Nobody's come to church. Our giving is down about 30%, which is a big chunk because we started a building program. Right. We've got a brand new Kids Point Ministry Center that's going up right now. They just finished framing walls today and plumbing and electrical and all this stuff. And so this was a major decision. I'm like, okay, God, do I shut this project down? It was so hard to get funding for it. And the stewardship initiatives we did with Enjoy Stewardship and all this stuff. And I'm like, do I shut it down? And something just wouldn't let me do it. I couldn't pull the trigger and shut it down. But in the middle of all this, here's what we did. I called my board. I said, guys, I'm not really asking for a vote. I'm kind of letting you know what's going to happen. And I said, we're going to give some money away. And we've always done it. Whenever we were in trouble, I said, we need to give some money away. This is a faith walk for us. And I know it makes no sense, but I found 3 small churches with older senior pastors that I knew were going to be in trouble, and we adopted them. Mm-hmm. Not because we had the extra money, but because, again, that resonates between my ears. If you need a blessing, you be a blessing, and we need a blessing. Mm-hmm. So we started giving money away. We set up a fund. We took some money out of different funds that we knew we weren't going to be able to use for a while. And I said, let's just earmark this. We're going to give this away. We had people calling, needing financial support until their stimulus money came in. We set up an online thing. Hey, here's an application. Go there. We'll help you until the fund depletes. And people kept replenishing the fund. And I'm going, oh, God, how are we doing this? How are we doing this? But the money kept coming in. Somebody would call and say, hey, I want to donate $1,000 for this or $2,500 for that. And I'm like, hey, we're going to keep giving away as long as it comes in. And I've already seen, just in what we've done, we've probably given away $14,000, $15,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, okay? But when you're taking a hit,
Oh, yeah.
it's really hard. And so what's happened is there's a lot of people that have held on to God's part of their income because they're nervous. Is this going to last?
Sure.
Is it?
Yeah.
And there's no way I could do that. I've never been raised that way, and God has never failed me. So to model that to our people, and man, you just can't imagine what a step of faith this was. I told my board, I said, again, we're not voting. We're just doing this, and we'll meet about it after we can. But for right now, we need to bless some people. We need to trust God and step out in faith, and we need to lead the charge and let our people see this happen. And God has come through big time.
Amen.
Can I speak to that? just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
sec?
please.
So first of all, I just want to affirm you because there's a spiritual authority principle at play, and so how we operate is how our church operates.
Right.
And so we have to live what we preach and teach, and so we have to be gracious and generous and so forth, and that has a ripple effect. But secondly, as you were talking about the building program, because I've been there and understand that. I want to encourage you to keep moving forward and to move forward by faith.
Amen.
I just finished preaching through Jeremiah, and Jeremiah bought a piece of land when they were being exiled, and they weren't even going to be able to use it for 70 years, but God told him to do it. It didn't make a lick of sense.
Yeah.
But he said, but this is a declaration that there's better things to come. And so for you and for those that are in that type of situation, we need to be people of faith and not cower in fear and quit doing stuff that were a part of the vision that we believe God gave us anyway.
Right.
And so press on.
All right, we got 3 preachers here, so I got to do that.
I know.
All right, now, because there's people, we followed suit. We found an evangelist who was suffering through this.
Yep.
Had engagements for 24 engagements canceled. We found a church that was literally had people starving in another country. But there's somebody on Facebook, Lord forgive me, who says, you know what, you just want to open up your church just because you're greedy. You're all worried about money. Look, God takes care of us, and he has proven himself, and he will prove himself faithful over and over. And sitting right here, this is why you're here. It's why I wanted this conversation, because we've got examples that are absolutely contrary to the narratives that are going out there. Somebody can tritely or flippantly say, you know what, and cast this dispersion and accusation. I just wanted us to have a platform to say, you know what, this is a benevolent man. This is a giving, selfless person. And that's what Christianity is all about. It's about us literally embracing, not when it's easy, but it's faith that allows us to do that even when it looks like it may be to our own detriment.
Right.
So guys, thank you. I mean, because you're talking to each other and you're affirming each other. That's beautiful. Now, you ain't going to get out of this. So how do you encourage? How do you bring peace? How do you bring that person from fear to faith in the area of religious freedom?
Honestly, I'm battling with it because, like Richard, I've never been politically involved in a lot of the, all the hot button.
We all
stuff,
try to. We don't want to cause unnecessary drama, so we try to stay out of the fray.
Again, I have a very diverse congregation.
Right.
It's really diverse. Okay, and a lot of people. If you were to take a poll, and I kind of have in my conversations, I've got as many Democrats as I have Republicans in my church. I would say it's split right down the middle. So the hot button issues of fighting, whether it's Trump or Pelosi or whoever else is in the, the foray, I try to speak to biblical principles and make sure I stay on point. And if politics intersect with what I believe the Bible teaches, then I'm very bold and upfront about that.
Right.
I'm not gonna cower down, and I'm telling you, my approach is going to change after this. Let me tell you, one of the things that I am going to start speaking more to is the second coming of Jesus Christ. I don't think I've said enough about it.
Yeah. Right.
And then when you start talking about the second coming of Jesus Christ, guess what you're going to talk about? You're going to talk about the signs that are popping up everywhere. And I think God's shaking this thing up. One of the things, he's stripping down the things that we've had so much confidence in. And I have second-guessed myself more than a few times on building expansions and all that kind of stuff, and where we put our money. And I think we do have to evaluate that for the future, because we're changing how we're going to do ministry. But for me, I have got to step up my game and get my folks ready when I start thinking about the second coming of Christ. I haven't talked about it enough, but I certainly will in the future.
I had 2 words. The beginning of the year, in January, I spent some time fasting, spending time with God, and I really felt like there was a particular word that came. You're going to chuckle when you hear this. And I shared it with the congregation. I shared it with the staff initially. I said, there's one word I feel like God is speaking: adventure. I believe this is going to be a year of adventure, and now they're ready to stone me because it absolutely has been an incredible adventure. But there was another word recently that came out, and I don't want us to miss this. And it means that me personally, I'm going to come out of this with a renewed fervor, which I needed personally. And the scripture, you'll remember Jesus said, I will work while it is day. The nighttime is coming when no man works. I believe we have a door of opportunity. So I want to speak to freedom for just a minute. One, I am very encouraged that we have a Department of Justice who is filing lawsuits against governors who are unequally applying the law to churches and some others. That's very encouraging to me. There are people in our government who are committed to protecting religious freedoms on our behalf. That, to me, I would say, look at that. That's an encouraging thing. We will have, on the other side of this, a renewed opportunity to reach, and I would encourage people, let's value and utilize those freedoms like never before. Let's reach into areas and in ways that we've never reached before.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I mean, we just have to be faithful and get after it.
How would we, and I want to offer an encouragement in the area of those who are really, really concerned about the health, who are really, really concerned about dying, who have loved ones who have died, who have loved ones who had been affected, because I don't care what the media tells you. The last thing I would ever want as a pastor would be somebody to come here and end up suffering negative repercussions. But you can never, I just don't see a way in a real world scenario that you can offer an environment that is absolutely risk-free. We can't guarantee you a terrorist won't run through, even though we have security. Right. But what would you say to encourage, and when I was speaking to somebody concerning this, I think it's important that anybody who is scared, I appreciate them and I love them and I care for them just like anybody who is over here on another issue. Mm-hmm. I don't want to shame anybody for feeling like they want to wear a mask or personal protection. And at the same time, I don't want somebody else to be shamed into doing something that is not a real conviction and something they don't believe is real. How do you encourage those who are facing real fear in the area of health?
So, first of all, just to let you know, first of all, you are loved. I mean, we are with you, okay? And if you are at high risk, please stay home.
Amen.
This is the beauty of the online engagement. This is where it is. Please stay home. We celebrate that and we encourage that. We want to help you. Life is a risk. Getting out of bed in the morning is a risk. Choosing to get in the car is a risk. And I'm not minimizing anything related to this. Just saying, let's walk not in fear. Fear is not of God.
Right.
Let's walk by faith. Let's be wise. Let's be smart. Let's listen to wise counsel. Right. Respect those in authority over us. But let's walk by faith, not by fear. Yeah. And so stay home if you need to. And I have a mother who is doing that, okay, and out of state. My brother lives 2 doors down. They have not visited each other because she's in that high-risk category,
right.
Okay? Bless that. And yet, for the rest of us, maybe not at high risk, let's walk by faith. Let's be bold and courageous.
Right.
Let's be strong, not irresponsible.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, somebody's going to twist it and say we are. That's not at all what we're saying. But let's be people of faith, not fear.
Absolutely.
We need to love folks, and part of that is love in action, not hiding.
Right. Bring them. Want to bring people along wherever you are. How do we move? How do we move there? I was telling my staff today. I was talking to them, and I said, you know, anytime I encounter fear, in any way, any shape. The Bible says He has not given us a spirit of fear. I see that fear, unless it's fear of God,
right.
as something that is counterintuitive to right. God's will in my life. Right. And I treat it very intentionally.
And I would say, Tony, you are, I am. We're all going to do what we can to be clean, to be safe,
Absolutely.
To be responsible, and have everything that we can think of be done.
And we do that as a culture.
We do.
Yeah.
But for some, it's not going to be enough.
Right.
So we can't live we're not a unified society, okay? Right. Let's rally around the faith. Let's move forward by faith and get back to work, and let's gather together.
Hey, let's think about, too, what happened. We didn't get to celebrate Easter in community,
Right.
in-house. So let's think about this. And I, because I've thought a lot about it, but the disciples watched Jesus, the man that they'd followed and do all these miracles, they watched him basically just murdered and tortured on a cross. And it paralyzed them in fear. And basically they went into hiding, you know, and you didn't hear, there's a silent part there. And then, you know, what they didn't know was that Jesus already talked about it, okay? But they went into hiding because it's like if they could do that to him after all the great things we've seen him do, what are they going to do to us, kind of an attitude. And they didn't know that the best part was still to come, you know? But I think it's imperative that Christian people who believe that there's more to life than this life, we have to look at this and understand that God can't do his best work through us as long as we continue to live in fear. Right. You got to come out of hiding at some point. And again, I agree with you and Richard and everything that's been said in the respect of if you're high risk, stay home. I would never want to put anybody in peril or in harm's way with that. And we're going to take measures. We're going to do everything we can. You know, there may be more elbow handshakes or fist bumps or whatever, you know, is going to be commonly accepted. But at some point, you know, I really believe in my heart, and I could be wrong, but I think God has allowed this on purpose to shake us up from and out of our comfort zones. The church is going to have an opportunity, like I like the word he said, to reset, and to be able to come out of the shadows with boldness and with courage and with faith and with a message that, hey, that was not a good season for us, but the best is yet to come. God's given us an opportunity to refocus and to reprogram and to, you know, to emphasize the things that are the most important. Yep. And while I'm thankful that we have buildings to worship in, I think you're going to see the church come out of the four walls of the church and be a little bit more public in their approach to how we carry the gospel to the world.
It's kind of like the Second Great Awakening, I think, happened that way. They got revival and didn't go back to church. They went to a world that needed it. I'm going to ask you guys a question, and we'll kind of close, you know, with this question. But you alluded to something before I get to that. You alluded to something, and before we started this conversation, we all concurred. We all come into agreement on the idea that we can walk in unity, even if there's not necessarily unison.
That's right.
These are all real ideas with real problems. It's only when we allow these real problems to divide us that the enemy wins. You know, we're sitting here, I mean, we probably wouldn't have been sitting here representing three very different demographics, three very different ideologies in some cases, although we have the commonality of Jesus Christ, and that's what binds us together is much greater than anything that divides us. We are the church. And I think that this is and will allow moving forward an opportunity for a coalition, a cohesion of us to come together when it really, really matters. And I'm so happy to see that.
Yeah, amen.
So I called a pastor today and I said, I'm just calling to check on you. And he's like, man, thank you. It just meant so much. So the question I want to ask, Pastor Richard, your congregation is watching this. They want to pray for you. They want to lift you up because guys, if you don't know, this is hard. We're messed up if we do. We're messed up. We're going to lose. It's a lose-lose on so many levels. You want them to pray for you. How can they intercede for you?
Yeah, wisdom and discernment, because we're not making any decision flippantly or lightly. We do value people. We love people. We're called to serve them. And so wisdom and discernment on how we re-enter, you know, and that process. And then that we too, I mean, we're all human too. Right. I say every Sunday, this church not perfect and this pastor certainly isn't, you know. So we need to walk by faith as well, not by fear.
That's right.
And so we have our own fears. We have our own concerns. Even as leaders, doesn't mean we got it all figured out.
That's right.
So we're learning in real time. We want to walk with humility, walk in the favor of God, but wisdom and discernment be the top two.
Tracy?
Hey, there was a moment during all of this, and I'm hoping we're coming to the end, okay? But there was a moment where before Easter on Good Friday, we decided to pass out communion cups and let people drive through, and we put on gloves and masks, and we just, and man, there was a lot of them that came through, and, how many for your family for Sunday, and we're going to take it together online. And true story, man, we got to the church, and I'd put it out on social media, hey, come get your communion cups, we're going to do this on Sunday. There were 2 police cars sitting in the back parking lot, pointed right at where we had set cones up, and I thought, oh my God, here it is. Because I'd been hearing the horror stories from some, from different people. I walked back inside the building, and my wife and my associate pastor was in there, and we were getting ready to come out. I said, look, I had to come to a point where I said, I think I had a conversation with you about this time. I said, hey, let's get a plan in case they arrest me today, because we're going to pass out communion cups. So I had to come to the place, and it was not fun. It was not, I was nervous about it. I thought, golly, I've visited jails before. I never wanted to be on the other side of the bars, but I really thought, I said, oh my God, they're going to haul me off for doing this and having too close contact. So I had to weigh it all real quick, and it just kind of flipped the script, and I watched those guys as the cars continued to come through, and they just sat back there, and then ultimately one of them come through the line and got some communion cups.
Praise God.
So, but it was a moment for me to where it was a personal win for me to say, I am not a hireling. I'm in this because God called me to be here.
Amen. That's good.
So what Richard said about making wise decisions, I think ultimately it may not be in this set, but we're going to have to stand through some really tough times coming down the road.
No doubt.
And I think it's going to be in my lifetime. I worry about my children, but I want my church to pray for me, like he said, to make the right decisions.
Absolutely. Well, I think it is evident that I'm not sitting at the table with cowards. I think we would all concur. We would be willing to, by the grace of God, lay our lives down under the right circumstances or situations. Our congregation, I think we're leaders in those in our congregations because they know we would. They know we would go to the wall if absolutely necessary.
Not a debate. It's
not even a question. And we know the Bible says no coward will inherit the kingdom of God. So that's kind of a prerequisite. I would ask that my congregation, those who really care, would pray for me personally, specifically, of course, for wisdom and some of those other things. But every adversity offers an opportunity. And I would ask that you pray that I have the vision and the ability to see what opportunities. I believe that we can be better on the other side of this. I think about it. I pray about it. I ask God whatever it takes. And you know as well as I do, it has been out of the greatest adversity in our personal lives that we've seen the greatest growth. And I believe corporately we can experience the same thing. So that would be my prayer. Thank you both. Thank you, man.
Thank you,
Tom.
Thank you for coming. God bless you.
You too.
Love you,
Thank
Tony.
you, Tracy, for coming. Listen, and thank you for watching. Lift them up. Please lift us up. Your pastor, wherever they are, whoever they are, realize they need your prayers. They need your intercession. But thank you, and remember, God is up to something good no matter what. God bless you.